Well folks, this is the beginning of a series on Seddon House. For a kick off, I'll take you around and just show you the outside of it. The building is our most historic building. It's got a bit of a problem in that the dollars required to save it make a purely economic model not work. So the boiler house there to the left, number of windows missing. Have no builder, but the bones appear to be still there. It's pretty much right in the centre of town, and once it was the centre of government on the west coast. And that's the driveway between the library and Seddon House heading out onto Sewell Street. And then we go back onto the front of the building. Now, with the permission of the owners, I've arranged to grab a key. I'm going to take you on a tour inside. Ian Gilbertson's going to join me as he, along with many others, worked in this building and the one next door throughout the 70s, 80s. It truly is a magnificent building. Well folks, we've got the key for the Seddon House, and I've got Ian Gilbertson who's giving me a hand. Ian, we've got the front door open. What do you reckon? We'll go and have a look.
Yeah, righto. Yeah. First time since I left dock and forestry that I've actually been back in the building. I first opened these doors in February 1961, so that's getting back a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like.
We'll go and have a look.
Okay. I left Dunedin Otago Boys High School and took up a drafting cadetship with the New Zealand Forest Service. So I walked through these doors for the first time in February 1961.
61?
1961. I boarded at the old post office hotel across here for a couple of weeks until I managed to get boarded with Mrs. Clawson in Handon Street next to the old maternity hospital. But yeah, so when I walked in here I was met by Bruce Isherwood, who was the chief draftsman for the Forest Service, and he immediately showed me where I was going to work through these doors on the left, and I sat looking out the window at the backside of Richard John Seddon for something like 25 years while I worked on my drafting work, drawing all sorts of maps of the west coast.
So let's go to the right. Let's wander in and have a look. This is the current condition of the building. It's one of our most historic, or it is our most historic building, isn't it?
Well, the building itself, we were always led to believe it was in very good order. Obviously there's a lot of paint flaking off. This was the Forest Service storeroom where Jack Nelson, Jim Jemison, Brian Walsh, a number of characters worked here. So if you wanted to borrow or a piece of paper, you had to come in here and get permission to get it from old Jack Nelson.
Oh, and get it signed out.
Yeah.
I love it.
They were pretty tight in those days. But this was the Forest Service store area. Further down this passage, this is where the legal people worked.
When you say the legal people, what?
This was the court registrar worked in here. Bob Gay was one of the registrars early on in the piece.
And these were the officers of the...
And these were the officers in the court, and there were a number of filing areas in here, and of course the big safe where they had lots of legal documents.
So when you say the legal people, was this the courthouse?
Yeah, this was the courthouse, and the courthouse was actually a beautiful courthouse on the end. The judges used to come once a month. But yeah, I remember Bob Gay came to Hokitika. He actually was a New Zealand basketball rep player, And along with Bob and a few other people, we actually started up indoor basketball in Hokitika, and I ended up playing for Hot Shots.
What do you think of the general condition?
Well, once again,
It looks like the bones are here.
in those days, Ministry of Works and people like that used to keep it all painted up. But you can see underneath all the paint, it's all kind of heavy plaster and brick. And it seems to me as though it wouldn't take very much to actually bring it back. And some of the paints that are available these days are much better than what they were in those days. But this would actually return to its. It was a beautiful, beautiful building, and it was all very well maintained.
So what was this room here, Ian?
Well, there was a big counter in here, so
Yeah.
the public could come in. If you wanted to get married by the registrar in those days, this is where it all happened. And quite often the registrar would come along and grab some of us as witnesses for registrar weddings. But this is where it all happened. So the registrar supported all the activities in the big courtroom, which is down on the end.
And so what's the big building? What's the big room in behind us here?
So this was the safe where they kept a lot of current legal documents, births, deaths and marriages in those days. So this is where it all happened in here.
Once again, very straight, very solid.
Yes.
Concrete floor, plastered walls.
You'll notice that, when I was working here, we had several earthquakes, and the only thing that happened in the earthquakes was a bit of plaster fell off the ceilings.
Right.
And of course that was some pretty big earthquakes. So you'll notice that there doesn't seem to be very many cracks in the building, and it's still in pretty good order, it seems to me. Obviously, a lot of the electrical things are quite old-fashioned compared with modern days. So, since the building was basically closed, there've been a number of groups have leased it and occupied it, various rooms, short-term rentals, but it basically hasn't been maintained. I'm not quite sure of the day that it actually closed.
So the rooms on the left here, what are they?
I'm just trying to remember. I'm pretty sure that this is where the witnesses waited until they were called to go into the courtroom.
Yeah.
So these had nice comfortable chairs in them, and this is the waiting room for the court in here.
When did the court shift from here? What year was it? Can you remember?
Well, all I remember is that the judge used to arrive. I think it was every month, and they did. Basically, the court got shifted to Grahamhouse, but they did exactly the same thing in here. So they, right from traffic offences right to some quite major cases, they were all held in here. And this really was. It was beautiful, all renew panelling.
So we're going into the courthouse now.
We're into the courthouse now. Yeah, there was steps down. There was a big bench along the front here, and the judge actually appeared from out the back here.
Gosh, look at the beautiful wooden panelling.
So these were the judge's quarters out the back. There was, I think there was a toilet and a little smoko room, and
there's the toilet area.
yeah, that's right. Yeah.
So the judge would appear out of
He would come out of
here.
here, and all those beautiful half-round seats, wooden seats. A lot of those got souvenirs. You can still see the old ones around Hokitika. There was a big rail across here. So the defence lawyers and the prosecuting lawyers were sitting in here. There was a rail across here, and then seats all went back. And it was all beautifully painted up. And
See the crest above the.
yeah, I think that's the Justice Department crest.
What staggers me is, like, it's got really good bones. Everything's straight. Oh, it feels.
Well, is it, while there's been lots of talk about the years about how safe the building is, you'll notice you won't see any cracks in the building. So if it was badly damaged, you'd expect to see a lot of internal damage, but there's none. You don't see any big bulges in the roof, so obviously it's been kept reasonably watertight. But of course the paint's all flaked off quite badly. But
and they've got some. There are some piling problems. I can see there's a few areas where it's definitely up and down.
Yeah.
Were you here in the '68 earthquake? Did you feel it down here?
Yes, yes.
So this building would have been right in the middle of it.
Yeah, but and once again, the whole building shook, but there was no major damage.
Oh, this is beautiful.
So there was upstairs. There was a little bit of plaster came off some of the mouldings around the edges.
Well, folks, we're in Seddon House, and this is the old courthouse, and I'm with Ian Gilbertson, who started work here in 1961. Probably knows more about the practical side of being in the building than anyone. We'll keep wandering.
With these old radiators, and the boiler was down out the back, down underneath in the basement, and really it was very well heated. Quite often we'd have to get people in to actually turn them off, because during the winter even they were very, very efficient.
So where would it be heated from now?
I'm not quite sure, the boiler's still down there. I haven't been down to the basement in a long time.
Well, there's a boiler shed outside.
Down underneath, yeah.
Oh, okay.
Down
right.
Underneath, yeah.
Oh, this is magnificent. This would be a tourist attraction by itself. Really would.
Well, it's a shame it's the setup in the courtroom that was all dismantled. It's a real shame, because it was beautiful. It really was. Especially all the timber. I mean, it's deteriorated a bit. It's all sanding down and re-varnishing. But you'll notice.
You notice there's no borer, Ian.
There's no borer. It's in very good order, really.
Wow.
Okay.
So that's the legal end of Seddon House.
That's right.
So we're now back at the front door, which is there,
So
and
the toilet's out the back,
right.
and this was the cleaner's office, and there was a full-time cleaner and a lady that came in and did the morning tea. They used to bring the morning tea around on trolleys in those days.
Oh, they were the days. So the main power coming in here.
This was the drafting room in fire service days. So I sat here by this window, looking out at Dick Seddon's backside, and also I joined the fire brigade very early in the piece, the old fire station down there, and the siren, of course, is right up on top of the roof of the building. So quite often when the siren went, you'd hear it vibrating through before you actually heard it. So as soon as the fire siren went, of course, I was out the door and racing old Joe Hutchins from Renton's down to the fire station to open the door. But there were two rooms here for the drafting staff. This one and this one here.
This was drafting. Was it for?
This is all fire service drafting.
Oh, fire service. Yep.
And surprisingly, I don't remember the wallpaper, but I remember the colours of the walls. This hasn't changed, and you can see it's in original condition. Again,
No cracks.
it's exactly as I remember it. We had about there were 6 of us, I think, at one stage working in here, and Bruce actually was in the building there, the office next door. So
Who was the did they have a conservator of forestry, or what did they have?
I think he was upstairs. Jim Ballance was the conservator at the time. Bert Williams was the assistant conservator. Stuart Ogilvie was the senior ranger, Yeah, lots of different people coming and going. Hokitika was seen to be a bit of a transition for people who came to the West Coast to gain, in forestry days, indigenous experience. So quite often they'd come here for 12 months, 2 years, and then they'd move on to other forestry offices around New Zealand.
So Ian was,
See,
this is in perfect order.
Original condition, in very good condition, hasn't changed.
And the big heater there, once again,
Yep.
the big radiator. So there were 6 people working in this room and the one next to it.
That's right. Between there was 2 of us in here, and we had another 3 or 4 in here.
Goodness me.
So big drafting desks that were made by Malcolm Dow,
Right.
the Dow family. They were quite expensive, like big old review desks.
Well, there'd be quality. You can imagine the quality though.
With glass tops, so that you could actually see through all sorts of different transparencies.
So the Forest Service in 61,
Yeah.
this would be the centre for the coast?
Yes, that's right. This was the Conservancy headquarters.
Okay.
Now the ranger staff, of course, they occupied where you're sitting now, Mr. Mayor, in the upstairs in the post office building. We had the telegraph people, all the P&T people were there, and the ranger staff occupied upstairs, and they used that as their base. So,
Well, there was another government building, wasn't it? Built by the Ministry of Works, I suppose.
that's right. Yes.
Very solid, very solid building. So 6 of you in here, and the draftsmen were. What did the draftsmen do back then? I mean,
Well, my original job, it was fascinating really, because I was brought up, my dear old mum, when I realised I wanted to draw maps, we subscribed to the old National Geographic, and I was fascinated by maps. And when I came here to Hokitika, I was given sets of instruments and watercolours that I think that were previously used by Joseph Banks in the Captain Cook days. It was really old stuff. And for the first 6 months of my cadetship, I basically did lettering practice and drawing lines and colouring maps, practicing until I was competent enough to actually start drawing the first of hundreds and hundreds of sawmilling maps. I originally started doing Warden's sawmilling areas, because in this court down here, the old warden in the old days, in the 20s, they were still allocating blocks via the warden's court. In 1919, the Forest Service was formed 100 years ago, and they regulated the timber industry, and we then started drawing maps for each of the sawmilling companies. And you've got to remember, when I first started, one of the first jobs I did was marking the sawmills on the maps. So the Conservancy at the time went from Punakaiki to Haast, and there were 102 registered sawmills in 1961. And now, of course, there's only, I think there's 3 left. And they're not cutting natives, of course, they're cutting piners. So, yeah, there was plenty of work to do. And it was very old-fashioned, no computers in those days. Everything was hand-drawn. It would take me about a week to do a sawmilling plan with all the details on it. Now, of course, if you had a computer, it would probably take you 3 or 4 hours. And that's the sort of changes that happen. So this was old-style drafting, using all sorts of old Harling drafting instruments and Winsor and Newton watercolours.
Ian, I can't get over the condition.
This is in almost exactly the same as I remember it.
1961.
Clean and tidy.
Yeah.
Clean and tidy, and yeah, in good order, as you can see. That was the ladies' toilet. This area was a forestry storeroom. This is where the storeroom staff actually kept all of the rifles and ammunition. When I started, I think Paul Team was in stores in those days. And those days you could get tokens. If you brought in deer's tails or deer's ears, I can't remember now, you got 3 rounds of 303 ammunition, but they stored a lot of the old Mark IV early World War One 303 rifles in here. There were big racks on the walls, and this was where they sorted all that sort of stuff out. So it was basically a schoolroom.
And 14 worked here.
14. Yeah.
Oh no!
You know, yeah, yeah, the hard shot. Now, from memory, this is again the other part of the legal piece, the lands and deeds. And when you went through this big safe, this was all the documents that were eventually transferred to Como House, lands and deeds, and of course now it's all been computerised and taken to Christchurch. But in those days, all the titles, legal documents were actually stored here. So if you were purchasing a property anywhere on the coast, this is where all the information was kept.
So is that a safe there? Or is that just a door?
Right, series of safes.
So these rooms on the right here and the left, Ian?
This was the big safe.
Yeah.
This was kept open during the day, shut during the night.
Look at the thickness there, goodness
I mean,
me.
this all here, there were quite a lot of people associated with lands and deeds working in here. And there was another safe out the back where all the titles were kept. So this is before we've got electronic registration, of course. So every title, all the hand-drawn documents are all kept in this safe, and here. So around the walls and echoes, there were a series of shelvings, and they were all very carefully numbered. So the girls in Lands and Deeds, you came in if you wanted to buy a house, you'd come out here and you could search the original titles. But once again, and you notice even the windows, they're not that bars, it was very secure. Of course, these are quite precious because the original documents went way back. A lot of the titles were original titles that were issued like from the 1860s. They were all kept in here.
So this thing here, heating, I guess, to ensure the documents were dry?
They were safe and secure.
There's,
you notice once again,
there's not a crack anywhere.
If the building was in poor repair, you'd expect to see lots of cracks in the wall. And I haven't been in here for a long time, but
I can't
this
see.
is how I remember it. And it's, apart from the paint and the shelving not being here, this was pretty tight. It was like lots of little corridors in here. There were just so many documents. But this is where it was all kept.
It's an absolutely amazing condition.
Again, it's in slap coat of paint on this. This should be as good as gold.
And that feels like a concrete floor we're in there. And what was this room, Ian?
Well, again, this was where there were several ladies working here. June Lane, Margaret Cowie. I can't remember all the names now.
What are they big
But they were
metal
all
drops for the windows, are they?
Yes, they were all closed every night, all the windows, for security reasons, you see. Big, heavy-duty steel windows, if you like. So they were processing and doing all the transfers. That's what they did, basically, in here. It was a one-stop shop. They worked very closely with the legal people, of course, the solicitors downtown. But they were pretty busy in here. There was just so much going on.
So if you bought a property, you'd end up getting your documents coming through here.
That's where it all happened, in here. Yeah.
Once again, Ian, all the wallpaper, everything's straight.
Well, that's right, and you'll notice, and especially more so upstairs, a lot of the mouldings and they were old-fashioned, I suppose now, but once again, in very good order, all the plastering. You'd expect to see if the building was in a bad state, that would all be crumbling and coming down, but you'll notice it's in very good order.
There's nothing at all, is
You
it?
wouldn't have to do very much just to tidy it up.
So after nearly 100 years of earthquakes, there's not a crack in the building.
Well, I haven't seen one so far.
So this is part of the old lands and deeds.
Lands and deeds. They the smoko room.
Yep.
And it was, I mean, it's hard to imagine, but it was a very busy place. There was just so much going on.
Ian, no movement at all in the floors as we're walking, is there?
Thank you.
There's no movement in the floor or anything that as we're walking through.
With some poles or
Well, some of it's concrete, I've picked that, but down at in the courthouse end, it looked like a wooden floor.
down there I think that was a wooden floor. Because that would be the original courthouse. But the original building.
And so this was
To the top floor, this is where the management of forestry, lands and survey, and the lands and survey drafting room was upstairs. The forestry one was downstairs. So the lands and survey drafting room, of course, was much busier than it is than the Forest Service one was, because they were doing all sorts. So people like Barry Bone, who's just recently retired from the county, Peter Oliver, they all worked up here, so they would have much, they'd know a lot more about what was going on upstairs. But I can tell you what I can remember.
goodness.
Beautiful old place. So this was.
Oh wow.
So this was mainly used by the Forest Service, and we kept a lot of documents, our legal documents, in this area. Again, shelving all around the wall.
The drop-down metal protection frames for the windows.
Yeah.
And this was like a store or a
It was mainly maps,
document store.
maps and legal documents. Yeah.
And would this have been for lands and deeds?
No, Forest Service.
Oh, for Forest Service.
Forest
Okay,
Service.
righto.
Yeah.
Once again, look at the brickwork. Now that would be double lined, wouldn't it?
I think so. Yes.
You know, when you look at the thickness,
Yeah.
it's wow.
So it hasn't changed a bit really. All the shelving's gone. That's all.
So I guess Ian, back in the day, if you were working on the top stairs, on the top floor here, you'd actually made it.
So we'll head down this way.
Right.
I've got to try and remember what was in here. This was this was Forest Service on this side. The conservator was in this room, I think. So Jim Ballance worked in this room, and the account staff and admin was in the room next door. And then from here back this way, I think it was all lands and survey. I think the chief surveyor worked out of here.
Look at the woodwork here, folks. This is fantastic.
Can't remember what was in here. And this,
Wow. Once again, the floors. There's no movement in the building that you can see.
so the public actually came in here, and there was this was the area where you wanted to, if you wanted to search old maps and survey records, if you want to know where the boundaries of your section were and all the rest of it. This is where you come in here. There was a big counter in here, so you'd come up to the information counter and tell them what you wanted. In this area in here was the first of the, was a beautiful old camera, a photostat machine, which was big, and you could actually copy maps.
That would be almost. That'd be a first, wouldn't it?
Yeah, so that was kept in here.
So we've got another safe.
This was another safe. There was a big cassette in here, and of course this was another safe which is quite precious. So I remember people like Jimmy Purcell, Heavy Taraka, he would come out here and he'd search the old maps.
Did you say Jimmy Purcell? Did you say Jim Purcell?
Yeah.
Oh, he worked here?
Yeah, Jim worked in here. He to work out. So they had a cassette room here. I think it was in here anyway. But I remember coming up, and a lot of the Charlie Douglas records, for instance, his original survey plans were all in here. Now some of those have gone away to Wellington, I think, and some of the old roll maps which were in the back, which are the original maps and a lot of the miners' maps. Every mining claim, they were all kept in here. Some of that information had gone down to the Hokitika Museum.
So this is safe number 5 in the building. This is the 5th safe we've been into.
Yeah.
Incredible. And they're
So in here, as you can see, this is a very large building because they have I can't remember, people like John Thorne, Barry Bone, Peter Oliver. There were about 10 draftsmen in here, and of course they were, once again, they were flown out. So this one's deteriorated a little bit.
actually, we've got some
rooms downstairs.
Got some water damage there.
There's some water damage on the windows by the look of it, because the windows have been broken.
Yep.
So there's water coming here. And once again, the old sash windows. So, yeah. This is the worst one we've seen so far.
And we're seeing a bit of damage now up to the likes of the corner there. That's
I'm not quite sure what's going on up there. But,
I'd say there's a big leak in that corner, probably.
so there's obviously been a leak of some sort up there.
So this building would have, how many people would have worked in the building, Ian? There could be 100 in the whole building.
Altogether?
Yeah.
Oh, goodness. I found an old forestry telephone book, telephone numbers, and I think there was something like about 35 forestry, but some of them worked, about a dozen of those worked over in the post office building.
Yeah.
And there would have been a hell of a lot more in Lands and Survey, of course. So yeah, you'd be talking 60 or 70 people, I'd imagine.
Wow.
So yeah, the chief surveyor, drafting staff, and the support people all worked in this area down here.
Once again, I've yet to find, and I've been looking pretty hard, I've yet to find anything with any borer in it.
Well, it's quite interesting, isn't
I mean,
it?
how does that work?
You'd expect to see a lot of borer, but I haven't actually seen any signs of it.
No, I agree.
Water damage is obviously something that's in this area, and this is the only room that we've really seen that's in a poorer condition. But this sort of stuff, it's all plaster underneath, and yeah, remember, some of the moulding came down in one of the earthquakes, and I remember chaps from Grandhouse coming up with the Ministry of Works at the time. They replastered some of the stuff up here.
There's the ladder into the ceiling. And my claim is that as a young electrician, I was up there, and the timber work in the ceiling is unbelievable.
Yeah, I'd imagine, yeah.
And a lot of it was carry in,
Yeah.
which blew me away.
So this was the Forest Service admin staff. Nicky Hicks was here when I first came.
Right.
Of course, Nicky went on to be the engineer for the power board.
Once again,
She was apparently the first female engineer to qualify in Oxford University. So she was very special. So she worked in here with people like Margaret Brown, Bill Johnson, I can't remember the old names.
but apart from the paint peeling, once again, there's no cracks.
Yeah.
Wee bit of damage in the roof there.
Water damage
Yeah.
up there. I've been up on the roof in the fire brigade days, and you can imagine that over the years, some of the corrugated iron, if it hasn't been replaced, could be getting a bit bloody suspect, I suppose. But there is
Water damage there.
a bit of damage up in there, so obviously there's something going on up in the roof. But it's same again down in here, which may be the ridging, don't know yet.
We're getting into an area where it's, you know, and now we're seeing a few cracks here, which we haven't seen anywhere else.
Well, yeah, those sort of things, fixing roofs and things like that are pretty easy to do. But once you actually get major cracks, then that's kind of different. But I haven't actually seen any. Remembering that a lot of this, if there were cracks, they're just in the exterior inches of plaster on the walls.
Yeah, of course.
Rather than the original.
So what was at this end of the building? Are we still in lands and deeds?
This was the little piece in the middle was forestry.
Yep.
And then lands and survey down the end and that end. This was the forester's records room. Glenda Schroeder, Tony's wife, worked in here.
Right.
And again, it looks as though there's been a bit of water damage, which is coming off from the hallway in here. But I'm fascinated that the walls are in such good condition.
The walls and the floor.
Yeah, it's quite amazing, really, isn't it?
And no borer. And I mean, this has clearly been built of probably the best timber that was available.
Because the windows have sash cords.
Yeah.
That still actually works.
Okay.
Well,
Oh, look at that.
hasn't been shut properly. But of course, not that you get too much weather from the east, but there'd be a bit of maintenance. This I think was the commissioner's room and a meeting room. I'm not sure whether the commissioner was next door or in here.
So the commissioner of...
So this was Lands and Survey.
Okay.
Lands. When I first started, I think Jim Shaw was the commissioner, who ended up being the writing by marriage. Yeah, see
Did you do that to rise further in the ranks? So we've got some bad damage up the top there.
Yeah, Colin Christie was around. And of course, Lands and Survey in those days also had the farm settlement people. So they were managing all of the farm settlement. So there was quite a large contingent, Wood Alexander and people like that were working down in this end. So Ron Hazeldine, Gussie Thorpe. So Ron would know much more about the workings of this area. Of course, Ron still works for DOC now, Department of Conservation.
Yep.
He was part of my team when I was working there. So, yeah, so there's obviously the only damage that I can see, I'm not a builder, not anything, but appears to be water damage. But the rest, the walls and
no movement on the floor.
and pretty good water, isn't it? Still the original nice pastel colours.
And this room here, part of their...
So I think this may have been Trevor Bryant. He was the assistant commissioner at one stage. I think he worked in here. And then this out the back here was this was the Lands and Survey administration staff, and I think some of the
huge.
field officers in here. They worked in here. And once again, this I remember it before the wallpaper actually. So I'm not sure what's going on there.
So it had a bit of a spruce up at some stage by the look of it with the Pinex tiles.
Yeah. And the records room for Lands and Survey was out the back here.
So how many people worked in this room, Ian?
Oh goodness, there'd be at least a dozen.
It's a big room.
Yeah, it's a big room, yeah. Ron Hazeldine would be able to rattle off all the numbers of the people and who they were. I remember June name was in the records room. So once again, the records room was quite large.
Wow.
And there's an exit way, steps down at the back.
Fire escape there.
And we'll where your cars parked with the basement where pretty sure the boilers were for heating the whole room. Yeah. So that's pretty much as I remember it here, because I can't remember the date now, but in the 80s we all shifted over next door into the from Forest Service into the building next door.
Yep.
And funnily enough, that's had some issues with earthquake regulations as well, and I don't know whether that's been totally resolved, but that building's vacant as well across the road.
You're having
It's in pretty good order, really, isn't it?
having had a real good wander through, Ian, and you and I haven't been in here for a long time. What's your general impression of the condition?
Well, apart from the water damage, which obviously is related to the roof, I'm very surprised at how well it really is in pretty good order, really. There's obviously a lot of cosmetic stuff with paint is peeled off.
Yeah.
But
And once again, there's no, absolutely no borer that I can see.
yeah.
I've never seen an old building without borer.
Well, there've been a number of proposals from people who've looked at it to convert it into office space, bed and breakfast place, backpackers places and like that. And perhaps they didn't have the resources to do it, but you can see, like originally this was all plaster,
Yeah.
and then it's obviously been battened and had tiles put on at a later date. But originally, for whatever reason, they decided to retile it rather than replaster it. So I'm not quite sure why all those, whether somebody decided to pull all the tiles off and put another lot on. So it probably looks worse than what it is. But obviously the water damage in the roof is the only thing that really appears to be something that needs to be fixed.
Well, Ian, look, thanks very much for taking the time to come with me and show me through the building. And I've got to say that your recollection of names and that is outstanding. I mean, it's...
We spent a lot of time in here doing a lot of work, so yeah, it brings back a lot of memories.
Well, coasters, that's Ian Gilbertson. He moved into this building in 1961 and along with many of his colleagues spent thousands of hours in it. And this is our first time that we've had a look through for many, many years. Thanks very much, Ian, and we'll catch you later.
Very good.
Well, folks, we've got the key for the Seddon House, and I've got Ian Gilbertson who's giving me a hand. Ian, we've got the front door open. What do you reckon? We'll go and have a look.
Yeah, righto. Yeah. First time since I left Dock and Forestry that I've actually been back in the building. And I first opened these doors in February 1961, so that's getting back a bit. So it'll be interesting to see what it's like.
We'll go and have a look.
Okay.
We're at Seddon House, folks, and this is the old... We're going to have a look at the old, where the boiler used to be, downstairs. I'm with Ian Gilbertson. Oh, jeez. I'm not going in there, I haven't got any gumboots on.
Yeah, I've got gumboots. I don't know, I can't see all the piping's here, so I don't know whether the boiler's still there or not. Interesting. All the big pipes are there.
No, well, I think, look, you recall when they built this thing here, and then the piping from there went to the building next door and did all this one.
Oh, that's right. They put the new boiler room in, didn't they? Yeah. Well, which is just think the spouting's come down in there and it's been leaking.
Yeah.
But you showed me where all the big cracks are.
No. So Ian, we've got the front door open, and we've had a great look through the building. It's fantastic, isn't it? It's just...
It is. Yep. It's a lot of people work here, a lot of history here, and It's in very good order, really. Apart from a few issues with the roof, by the look of it, I'm quite surprised. Yeah.
And so that was the back end of Sir Richard John Seddon that you viewed on a regular basis.
Yeah, that was my view out of the window.
Well, folks, this is the beginning of a series on Seddon House. For a kick-off, I'll take you around and just show you the outside of it. The building is our most historic building. It's got a bit of a problem in that the dollars required to save it make a purely economic model not work. So the boiler house there to the left, number of windows missing. I'm no builder, but the bones appear to be still there. It's pretty much right in the centre of town, and once it was the centre of government on the west coast. And that's the driveway between the library and Seddon House heading out onto Sewell Street. And then we go back onto the front of the building. Now, with the permission of the owners, I've arranged to grab a key. I'm going to take you on a tour inside. Ian Gilbertson's going to join me as he, along with many others, worked in this building and the one next door throughout the 70s, 80s. It truly is a magnificent building.